What is going on, investors? Hopefully, guys are doing well out there. It is time for the weekend, and it is also time for the Fang Stock Recap Show here on the Investor Channel, where every Friday we recap all the major news and the technical chart patterns from all the major Fang stocks. This week, we had Apple's Chinese business get into question. We have a double top potentially forming in the iPhone maker as well. Did NVIDIA shares put up a reversal candle? We'll talk about that and more, but better kick things off like we always do with Meta Platforms. Start of the week at 501, sliding sideways, up about 1% to finish the week at 505.95. Google and Meta are going to see big ad spending, or they've already seen it. And my guess is towards the tail half of this year, they'll see it again with the shopping app Temu. If you go on any website, particularly during the months of October, November, and December during the major fourth quarter shopping, Temu was blitzing pretty much every website that I owned. My revenue from websites that I owned skyrocketed, and a lot of it has to do with Temu. Estimates are that it contributed nearly $2 billion in revenue for Meta, and probably even an equal number or a similar number for Google. Word was that Temu will continue the blitz as we move into, again, the fourth quarter of this year. TikTok's sale by China's ByteDance is sought by U.S. lawmakers. This flew under the radar as you had a big political event yesterday in the terms of the State of the Union. Before that, the Energy and Commerce Committee voted to approve a bill to essentially force a sale of TikTok. Otherwise, it will be banned here in the United States. It passed by a vote of 50-0. I heard that Steve Scalise, which is I believe a House member, he says he's going to bring the bill to the House floor next week. I also saw a rumor that President Joe Biden would sign the bill into law if it were to pass. And my guess is, not my guess, is I read through the text of this bill. Who knows what the final version will be, but they are only going to give TikTok a limited number of time, like maybe 3 to 4 months to sell the company. Potential bidders in the company. Last time this was threatened under the President Trump administration, I think Microsoft and Walmart stepped up as potential bidders. We'll see from a regulatory perspective if a Microsoft, certainly a Meta probably couldn't bid on an asset like this, although they would love to. Also Google, maybe even potential Apple. This would be an amazing tie-in for Apple in terms of launching themselves into social media, but maybe not the privacy aspect that they like. This story could become absolutely huge, and we'll keep an eye on it here on the channel. Moving on to Apple. Start of the week at 175.75, down 2.8%. Apple, from a technical perspective, is at decision day. We'll talk about that when we get to that segment of the show, but Apple finishing at 170.73. The company launched new 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Air models with the very popular M3 chip, or maybe not popular, but very high-quality M3 chip. If you have not experienced a Macintosh off of the Intel 86 design, I tell you what, you're missing out. They are fantastic laptops. Mine is on the M1 Ultra chip or something like Ultra Max chip or one of those. And part of the problem for Apple is my laptop's probably approaching 3 years old, maybe even it's in its fourth year. I have no need or reason to upgrade at the current time. Thing is chugging right along. Foxconn's February revenue tumbles, and it continues to see a decline in Q1. This is a foreshadowing for Apple, as Foxconn, obviously the contract manufacturer that Apple primarily uses. Its iPhone sales in China tumbled 24% amid rising popularity and just really a lack of demand for their devices. This really sent shares of Apple tumbling. It did recover later in the week. I think, how does Apple recover from this? Okay. Yeah, everybody could be like, well, they just come out with another. I think they have to innovate their way out of this. Apple needs innovation. It doesn't necessarily need to be anything groundbreaking, but they have been coming out with the same phone for a while now, and I think something different form factor. Some people might talk about the foldable phone, or maybe a screen on two sides of the phone. I don't know. Something different certainly could drive things forward. Now, Fortnite maker Epic Games said Apple had banned its developer account. That's not really good news. EU regulators were not happy about it and immediately queried the iPhone maker on that ban. And then Epic Games later in the week says Apple is backing down and it's reinstating its European account. Epic Games is the maker of Fortnite. They were battled with Apple in terms of a lawsuit. They were able to win parts of that lawsuit. They were trying to launch the Epic Game Store on Apple in order to collect or avoid paying some of those fees. Now, Apple, from a technical perspective, we'll talk about this in a moment, forming what many in the technical community are calling a double top formation. That would mean probably a further break to the downside. We'll get confirmation of that. Now, not really a surprise to you at the channel, as back in January, we said that Amazon would surpass Apple in market cap later this year. Right now, it's actually looking like a strong possibility. Amazon started the week at 179, like Apple, slipping down about 2.5%. Finished the week at 175.35. The company is facing a new FTC probe for fees charged to merchants. Hey, that's me. That's people that are selling on the company's billion-dollar marketplace. But sellers have complained that the fees are too complicated and prohibitively expensive. I would argue with that second part, but I would say that it is somewhat mildly complicated to figure out the fees on Amazon. Maybe that's some of that is design. Maybe it's kind of the like mid 2000-esque operating system or web background that they have running in the background. I don't know, but I tell you what, FTC probe leads to a payout for me. I'll be a supporter of that. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy sells $9 million worth of shares. This obviously goes along with Jeff Bezos selling, I think, about $9 billion worth of shares. Anytime you see a CEO sell shares doesn't necessarily bring a cause for immediate concern, primarily because $9 million after tax. Again, we can all live pretty darn comfortably on $9 million after the highest tax bracket takes out the income tax. But still, from a CEO perspective, $9 million plus some base compensation that he probably earns at Amazon, not wildly overpaid. AWS eliminates network fees for customers moving data from other cloud provider or to other cloud providers. So if you were on AWS and you had all your, like, let's say you had like a decade's worth of data on there, to pull that data off was going to cost you a ton of money. Amazon was going to charge you all these fees to pull your gigabytes or even terabytes of data off the service and maybe go and test out Google or Microsoft. Many were criticizing AWS, and some people thought that other cloud providers could gain some market share given this was AWS's stance, but it looks like they've at least backed off those fees, at least in the shorter term. Amazon backed Anthropic, which I think is also backed by Google and some others as well, announced its latest AI model, Claude. I have not had a chance to play around with it, but from all the reviews I saw, Claude is getting strong reviews, and while there is always some controversy and some weird results from these things, certainly not a Gemini-esque type of slip-ups, at least yet. Whole Foods Market is eyeing launching a small store concept across the United States. It's going to be called the Whole Foods Daily Shop, and it's going to be a size of maybe 7,000 to 14,000 square feet compared to Whole Foods store size of over 40,000 square feet. My guess is this will obviously contain a lot of your essential type of items, but also some of that high margin stuff, particularly that food. Anything on the edge of the Whole Foods Market is where they make all their money, all that prepared food and things like that, which seems to be pretty popular. I don't have a Whole Foods anywhere near me, but when I go into one, it certainly is an attractive shopping experience. Moving on to Netflix, start of the week at 618, down about 2% to finish the week at 604.82. This was some of the biggest news in the sporting world this week as Mike Tyson, yes, Mike Tyson, and influencer, or really kind of, I think he's more or less a professional boxer these days, or fighter, Jake Paul, are going to be fighting at AT&T Stadium, the giant stadium there in Arlington, Texas, on July 20th. And Netflix has exclusive global live streaming rights. Here's the deal. Mike Tyson is now 57 years old, and Mr. Paul is just 27 years old. I've seen footage of Mike Tyson essentially boxing in the air. I certainly wouldn't pull up and step to him. We'll see what happens here. Those of you that are younger than me, particularly maybe by a decade or so, you will not recognize Mike Tyson as maybe the iconic athlete that he is. But during Mike Tyson's heyday, his fights were almost like the Super Bowl because he would only fight a couple times a year, and they were spectacles. And I tell you what, I know what I'm going to be doing on July 20th, if this fight goes off. I tell you what, if this guy is 57 years old, give him props for stepping back in the ring. I'm sure he's getting a fat bag of money, but fighting a 27-year-old who has his stuff together, we'll see what happens there. Moving on to NVIDIA, start of the week at 849, hit our point of resistance almost to the dollar, actually a little over that. This thing blew through it and then got reversal pattern, still up 3% on the week. Finished the week at 875 and some change. The United States is said to urge its allies to put more chip restrictions on the country of China so they cannot access chip technology, from the software makers to the lithography machines to the chips that are made by AMD, NVIDIA, and others. So China is firing back, and they said, screw that. We're setting up our own $27 billion chip fund to beat the United States curve. I tell you what, who this probably benefits are the chip makers, particularly at the fringe of things. So it's not going to be your TSMs. It's not probably going to be your ASMLs. Certainly not going to be NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, kind of the regular suspects. But you have memory makers that are at the fringe that might be able to sell into China. You have test equipment. You have software that could potentially get some of this money that is flowing around in the chip industry. We'll certainly keep close eyes on that. Marvell dipped amid Q1 guidance woes, but analysts remained largely positive. Here's the thing. It was a mixed bag in terms of earnings as it relates to AI. You had companies like Snowflake, Marvell, Broadcom essentially be in line or sometimes maybe even slightly below guidance. Part of this is I just think the AI euphoria was priced into a lot of these stocks. They met expectations or maybe come underneath them, and the stock sold off. SK Hynix is going all in on AI chips technology as the memory maker is investing over $1 billion to improve and expand its advanced chip packaging technology. SK Hynix memory makers, you got to be careful paying up for this one, but boy, that stock chart looking fantastic. Broadcom, another big major chip maker, also reported their earnings yesterday. Revenue coming in close to $12 billion. 34% year-over-year growth. That beat expectations. Where they came up a little bit short is their guidance. $50 billion for the full year versus consensus right at $50 billion. This company will cost cut its way to profits, cash flows, buybacks, and dividends. Moving on to Google, start of the week at 133 and some change. The search engine giant up nearly 1.75%. Finished the week at 135.41. Google and Meta, we brought this story to you in the Meta segment, but these companies are benefiting from Temu. Any type of other e-commerce site or any type of site that has huge backing from a financial perspective certainly will benefit both of the top online advertisers. The company's Waymo division is going to test robo-taxis for employees in the great city of Austin, Texas. Waymo, certainly if you drive around in San Francisco, you will see the taxis, and you might also see them getting burned or torched or tormented by the citizens there in the great city of San Francisco. Google's Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of the company, said the Gemini image generation launch was a mess up. That might be the understatement of the week. But some of this, what this does is it hurts Google's brand. It hurts Google's reputation. How much? How it will have an impact on the company in the future certainly remains to be seen. But this company has had multiple missteps as it relates to rolling out AI. First of all, they were kind of slow to the punch. Then they came out with Bard, which was kind of a poor name for the service. It also was more or less in beta testing. Really only like supercomputer geeks were getting access to it or even using it. Then it rolls out Gemini to some fanfare. People are kind of excited about it. But then you have this kind of like woke results, which kind of more or less support some people's feelings about this company. And if they can't really turn it around, do we start talking about Google in the same sentence as like a Disney or maybe some of these other companies that certainly feel like they care more about DEI and wokeism than creating great products? And so Google, known for great products and a great service, can they get back to that? These types of things actually hurt the company in more ways than one, particularly branding. And we'll see if Google is able to recover. They certainly have the money and the resources to do that. I'm just not sure they have the leadership. I have been very vocal on this channel that I am not confident in Google's leadership. And everybody in the comment section starts to flip out and cry. Like Sundar Pichai actually sends you a percentage of the paycheck. Guys, if you own shares of Google, he works for you. And when you mess up to the degree that Google has messed up, I think somebody needs to get fired. That's the bottom line. AI's search engine rival over at Google, Perplexity. I've never heard of it, haven't used it, but it's seeking funding. It's eyeing a $1 billion valuation. Again, these are the types of things that happen when your brand image and the image of your company starts to slip in the eyes of people. Other competitors can creep up, and we've seen across the board. I was just doing a research project on IBM and BlackBerry and Sears and a lot of these companies that were once the top dog. And then your brand image slips, and it's over. Google could face some advertisers' antitrust claims. That's according to a U.S. judge. This ruling came through today and said Google could face advertisers' proposed class action lawsuit alleging that Google monopolizes the ad exchange market. I would agree with this. I buy a lot of ads on Google. I have no idea if I'm paying the right price. I just know there's a certain price you have to pay, and who knows how Google manipulates that. Moving on to Microsoft. Started the week at 413 and some change, down 1.8%. Finished the week at 406. Microsoft's not the only one mad at Russia, or I should say maybe the United States. Microsoft is mad now too, because Russian state-sponsored hackers stole source code in an ongoing attack. And look, I tell you what, company source code's certainly valuable, but at this point, Microsoft's value isn't in that their software hasn't been copied like a million different times from Apple to OpenOffice to Google to like everybody has a competing product against all of their software. They compete largely on being on the devices that are in the enterprise and collecting a fee on that. And look, nobody has been able to compete with them in about 40 years or so on that. Now, Microsoft's announced a new area of work and an event focused on Copilot and Windows. The digital event is scheduled later this month on March 21st, and you should also get Surface Pro 10 and Surface laptop hardware as well. OpenAI claims to dismiss all of Elon Musk's claims, or they aim to dismiss all of Elon Musk's claims, putting profit over humanity. In a blog post, they put some of Elon Musk's emails, which I really don't think really didn't put Elon Musk in a really good light. I don't think it put OpenAI in a good light. I think Elon Musk is more or less being a world's richest man troll in this case. The fact that he has so much money and he has so many attorneys that probably are on payroll. This is just something that he can do to fill their time over the first half of the year. My guess is not much is going to happen from this, but we also did see that Sam Altman is returning to the OpenAI board. Moving on to Tesla. Oh, what happened here? Tesla started the week at 194, down 10% in a week. Oh my goodness. Tesla down to $175. What the heck happened? Well, it had to halt production in its Germany facility after suspected arson led to plant evacuation. Looks like the plant in Germany is going to be closed for a little while. And here's the thing with Tesla is it sells a product that when you want to buy a car, and sometimes it's not when you want to buy a car, it's almost like you need to buy a car, okay? Your lease comes up, or you get a bonus, or you get a tax return or something like that, and you're ready to buy a car. Tesla has to be there with the car and be there with the inventory in order to capture that demand. If it doesn't, well, there's plenty of other car makers out there. There's other decisions to be made. You could go test drive a Subaru or a Mercedes or whatever else, and you might like it. And so when Tesla has production delays or interruptions, it will obviously, it's going to lead to a decline in sales. Shareholders or the stock market is pricing that in to a certain degree at the current time. My assumption, though, is that Tesla could supplement some of the lost demand or lost supply going into Germany with their Chinese plant, as they do export some of those cars. I think originally the European market was being served by that Shanghai facility. Now, Tesla fell after Morgan Stanley warns the bear case could be in play. Electric vehicles, similar to AI and maybe even semiconductors, were all the rage a couple of years ago, now completely fallen out of favor. Although you get a drop in rates, I think you're going to get a drop in rates sometime this year. This could be the EV sector, Tesla in particular, could be a good comeback trade towards the back half of the year. Now, Tesla is eyeing establishing a production facility in Thailand because Tesla is so young. When you have these types of arson events, which are really unfortunate in these plants, because there's people that work here, man. They rely on these salaries. I mean, forget the share price in a week or whatever. You know, there's people that work at these places. So it is unfortunate. Over the years, though, Tesla will obviously diversify into other countries, Mexico, Thailand, other places. And these types of interruptions won't have as big of an impact. We'll get to Tesla here in a moment, but we got to stick with the S&P 500. Still looking, I mean, this is still a really, really strong uptrend. Until you get a break of trend, you've got to assume that it's going to continue. Even a break of trend, you had a break of trend on this uptrend. You've broken trend before, only to resume at slightly less of a steep angle. A break of trend in the S&P 500 wouldn't necessarily immediately be bought, but certainly any kind of meaningful pullbacks in the S&P 500, starting probably right around 4,700, should be bought. Same thing with Meta, looking, whew, God, this looks so good. Higher highs, higher lows, like clockwork. I mean, you could buy the dip in that uptrend. What we're looking for is maybe a little bit more meaningful pullback, fill the gap. Maybe it never does. My guess is it will. Fill the gap in Meta. You're buying that one. Apple is forming a double top formation. That's when you make a top and another top that's basically in the same vicinity. And then you make this well-defined area of reversal. And it's right here at we'll call it 166, 165. We're hovering just above that or above that on Apple. Everybody's looking at the same chart. So there's either going to be demand that comes in here or supply, sellers come in. Push lower on Apple creates buying opportunities. The first one after the break of the trend is probably 155. You get now if you have nuts of steel, you actually buy Apple here, stop loss at like 164. So you're risking, call it $3 to probably come back to mid-trend, 178 to make 80, maybe to the back to a triple top all the way to 197. Short-term trading opportunities, certainly with Apple. I think you wait until this pattern resolves itself before you make a decision for anything like in a long portfolio. Amazon's still looking good. You're buying the dip on Amazon. If that pulls back, same thing with Netflix. I mean, this looks like a destiny up here at 710. I mean, we still got another $100 to go with Netflix until you meet overhead resistance. Speaking of overhead resistance, we said on last week's show, here's the chart, guys. I think people think I make these charts up. I was literally watching Bloomberg. They had the exact, I mean, they literally had the exact same chart up. Okay, Bloomberg, a little bit more respected, probably make a little bit more money than I do at these things, but they were telling their viewers the same thing, that this trend with NVIDIA has been in place for about 7 years. You reach the top right where this red line is. This is when, again, if you take profit. I say take profits in NVIDIA, and some of you guys like literally flip out in the comments and like make personal attacks against me. Guys, why did you buy NVIDIA stock? Did you buy NVIDIA stock to watch it just go up? Well, I'm here to break it to you. One day you're going to be terribly disappointed. Not every stocks just don't go up forever. I buy stocks to sell them. I buy stocks to make money. I have pulled money out of the stock market and bought not only this house, but a vacation home for my family. I say that not to brag. I say that because that was my intention when I bought the stocks. When I bought the stocks, I knew what I was going to do with the profits. Now, some of you got retirement accounts and those types of things. Be honest with you. If you're just a passive investor and you put $50 or $150 or $1,000 in the market every month, honestly, I don't know why you're watching the show. I don't know why you're subscribed to really anything from financial news. Just put your $1,000 in the market, warm up your golf swing, and instead of watching this for 30 minutes, practice your putting and your flop shots. And in 40 years, you're probably going to have a good nest egg. 30 years, you're going to have a good nest egg. But those of you that are trying to make short-term money, put some money into the market in the shorter term. Shorter term could be 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 years, those types of things, and you want to pull it out and buy a house, put a down payment on a car, put a watch on your wrist, whatever it might be, buy your wife a diamond bracelet. I don't really care what it was. I have done all of that, to be honest with you, with money that I've made in the stock market. Well, you pay attention to these technical patterns because guess what? To the dollar, NVIDIA crapped out. Look at that big giant red candle. Once you hit once the technical pattern hit, guess what? All those computer algos in New York, they hit. We all are looking at the same charts. Every investment bank, every hedge fund, everybody with more money than all of us watching combined, they all have the same chart. They all knew when NVIDIA got up here to 970, it was the sell button. You can argue fundamentally about NVIDIA. Fundamentally with NVIDIA, it looks fantastic. Technically, when you hit this level, it was the sell button. It was time to ring the register. Maybe not on your full position, but maybe on a partial position. This is good news for the rest of us that may or may not be NVIDIA. Pullbacks in NVIDIA should be bought, particularly deep ones. Whether or not that materialize remain to be seen. Google's still in an uptrend. Nice reversal this week. But in the micro trend, look what you're doing here. Lower high, lower high, lower low. This one looks like to me probably wants to get rejected. Retest the area down here at 128. You buy 128, stop loss at 120. You're risking $8 to make a new high in this uptrend. That's probably close to $30 higher. So that's a good risk reward setup for Google. Microsoft's starting to go sideways and consolidate between, we'll call this $400 level up to the highs at 420. You got a $20 trading range with Microsoft until you break decisively below or above that $20 range. I would assume that stock's probably going to be locked in there. Tesla had a bad week. Big red candles showing up in the micro trend. Again, intermediate trend, you're basically sideways on the stock. It's literally has not gone anywhere in about 4 years. Micro trend's not looking good. You're making lower highs. Couldn't even get above the midpoint of the channel. On this rebound from the bottom of the channel, you were looking for a rebound up here to 223. It got rejected here at 200. People with balls of steel should absolutely buy Tesla at this level. Again, this is for shorter term trade, shorter term money. Some of you guys just like to look at the numbers on the screen and not actually make money in stocks. But if you want to buy and sell a stock in a short period of time, Tesla does have a trade opportunity. It's not the best setup, but you buy here at 173. I'd have a stop loss at like 169, and you're playing a bounce back up to like maybe 190. So you've got like a $2 or $3 risk for a $15 upside, potential upside, maybe with a trailing stock back up to 200. Again, with a downtrend simply playing out to technical trend. Folks, that was the Fang Stock Recap Show for March 8th. I hope you all have a fun and safe weekend. We'll be back again next week. Until then, good luck with your investments.